जैसे इंडिया और पाकिस्तान के दरमियान ट्रेड रिलेशंस के लिए कुछ हुई है पेशरफ, उसके बाद टर्की में इस्तांबुल में हुई है, लेकिन अब भी साउथ एशिया जो है दुनिया का बहुत बड़ा हॉट स्पॉट है, जहाँ इंटर स्टेट मुख्तलिफ मुल्कों के दरमियान, मुल्कों के अंदर एथनिक कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स, न्यूक्लियर आर्मामेंट सबसे बड़ा हमारा इशू है। और साउथ एशिया मैं समझता हूँ कि मिडल ईस्ट के बाद एक दूसरा रीजन है जो बहुत ज़्यादा डेंजरस है इस दुनिया में। तो हमने इस साल पहली साउथ एशिया पीस कॉन्फ्रेंस यहाँ यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ नॉर्थ टेक्सास में की है, जिसमें ऑब्जेक्टिव ये है कि स्कॉलर्स, डिप्लोमेट्स, लिखने वाले, जर्नलिस्ट और ज़िंदगी के शोबों से ताल्लुक़ रखने वाले मुख्तलिफ़ लोगों को जमा करके एक प्लेटफॉर्म मुहैया किया जाए, जिसमें वो अपने इश्यूज़ डिस्कस करें कि किस तरह साउथ एशिया के फ्यूचर को ज़्यादा पीसफुल, ज़्यादा बेहतर और लिविंग रखा जा सकता है। साउथ एशिया के पास बहुत रिसोर्सेज हैं, लेकिन बदकिस्मती से गुज़िश्ता 60 साल के दौरान बहुत से मसाइल हैं जिनको हमें अब हल करना पड़ेगा। आज हमने सारा दिन 8 बजे से लेकर और अब तक हमारे सेशन होते रहे हैं। हमने सुबह 8 बजे एक स्पीकर हैं इंडिया के एक्टिविस्ट संदीप पांडे, जो हमने इंडिया से बुलवाए हैं। वो पाकिस्तान और इंडिया के दरमियान पीस प्रोसेस में वो कई साल से हिस्सा ले रहे हैं। तो उन्होंने हमें बताया कि न्यूक्लियर आर्मामेंट के ख़िलाफ़ उनकी जद्दोजहद क्या थी। उसके बाद दोपहर में अफ़गानिस्तान के एम्बेसडर हकीमी साहब ने अफ़गानिस्तान, पाकिस्तान, इंडिया और अमेरिका के रिलेशंस पे बात की और बहुत क्वेश्चंस हुए और उसके जवाबात दिए, क्योंकि ज़ाहिर है आजकल अफ़गानिस्तान एक हॉट स्पॉट है जहां अमेरिका अब अपने फ़ौजों को वापस बुलाने के मरहले से गुज़र रहा है। उसके बाद इस वक्त हम अब थोड़ी देर में पाकिस्तान के एम्बेसडर हुसैन हक्कानी साहब आने वाले हैं, जो जमहूरियत की सस्टेनेबिलिटी और उसके बका के लिए और टेररिज्म पे, शिद्दत पसंदी पे जो पाकिस्तान में है, उस पर बात करेंगे और पाकिस्तान का रोल साउथ एशिया में क्या है, पीस इस्टेब्लिश करने के बारे में वो उस बारे में अपने तकरीर करेंगे यहाँ पे। ठीक है।
अच्छा, वो है डॉक्टर संजय जो बता रहे हैं, बैठे हैं?
नहीं, इस वक्त नहीं।
इंडिया के हो गया। सही है, बिल्कुल सही है जी। बस बताइएगा कि जो कॉन्फ्रेंस हुई है ये पीस के हवाले से मतलब किस तरह बहुत अहमियत की हामिल है और इससे मतलब है कि किस तरह हमें
देखिए ये पाकिस्तान के कह रहा हूँ फिर से कीजिए। हाँ, ये जनूबी एशिया में ख़ास तौर पे अमन के लिए ये यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ नॉर्थ टेक्सास डेंटन में यहाँ के असातिज़ा ने और फैकल्टी मेंबर्स ने और जो यहाँ की एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन है, उन्होंने एक बहुत ही अहम फैसला किया है कि ख़ास तौर पे जनूबी एशिया में जो इस किस्म के मसाइल हैं और मुल्कों के अंदर जिस किस्म के तनाज़े हैं, उनको हल करने के लिए बहुत सारे दुनिया भर से, लेकिन जाहिर सी बात है अमेरिका से कि मुख्तलिफ़ यूनिवर्सिटियों से यहाँ पर मदऊ किए हैं असातिज़ा, यूनिवर्सिटी के फैकल्टी और पैनल्स मुख्तलिफ़ किस्म के, कुछ अदब पे है, कुछ सियासत पे है, कुछ तारीख़ पे है। तो इस तरह से जो है वो एक बहस तो शुरू हुई कि यहाँ पर लोग आपस में बैठकर एक दूसरे से गुफ्तगू करें, बातचीत करें और यही एक जो है वो आगे चल के शायद एक मुस्बत बात बने। कम से कम हम आपस में बात कर रहे हैं और एक दूसरे के नुक्ता नज़र को समझने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। काफ़ी
जियो के हवाले से जो अमन की आशा है उसके
मैं छोड़िए।
You can speak Urdu and Hindi and English. Tell me okay. Just
English.
English. Okay.
Yeah. This conference is a very good step to promote peace and cooperation between India and Pakistan. I think one of the best things is that it's a collection of academics, activists and diplomats. So there is good conversation between all three sectors who will do whatever they can to promote peace between India and Pakistan, and hope that's realized soon.
Can you tell your name and where you're from?
Okay, I am Vaidya Gundlupet. I teach at University of Texas at San Antonio. I work broadly. I mean, I teach international relations and international security issues.
From India.
I'm from India originally, and I've been in States for last 9 years.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Let's see.
And now this evening, we have invited the Ambassador of Pakistan, His Excellency Hussain Haqani, who will be speaking on sustainability of democracy in Pakistan and the peace issues. What's the role of Pakistan in peace in South Asia? First, I would like to thank the 10 centers and departments at UNT who supported me in organizing this peace conference, the first peace conference. The intention is to continue it every year with different themes. To organize this conference, we had about 11 departments and programs on campus who supported it. UNT Office of the Provost, John Grant, Office of Research and Economic Development, Center for the Study of Interdisciplinarity, UNT International, Peace Studies Program, International Studies, Division.
First of all, I want to thank all of you for being here. It has been a long day. Hussain Haqani, It is my pleasure to welcome him on behalf of the university and also on behalf of the President, Len Rollins, who couldn't be here because of his out-of-town engagement. Ambassador Haqani, it is really a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Dr. Prasad, for that very kind introduction. I think I won't let people wait till the end for a flavor of Urdu poetry, which, by the way, unites South Asia almost as much as curry and cricket. So I will begin by saying what Faiz, our great poet from Pakistan, said about the relationships between the various nations of South Asia, and his couplet goes something like this. He says, "Hum ke thehre ajnabi, itni madaraton ke baad, phir banenge ashna kitni mulaqaton ke baad." We who have become estranged after such closeness and intimacy, how long would it take for us to rediscover the relationship we all once had? That is the dilemma for South Asia. 5,000 years of shared history and a couple of centuries of different sorts of tensions that have exacerbated into war, and of course the whole saga of partition that continues to haunt the relationship between the two principal nations of the region, India and Pakistan. Now I could of course give you the conventional view, but then I wouldn't be Hussain Haqani if I did that. I could say that, these are the issues, these are the problems, and unless they are resolved, nothing's going to happen. But I'm going to give you a much more upbeat and a much more positive and a much more optimistic view. The fact of the matter is that what you read in the newspapers today is just that, today's news. It's not the future of our region. It's not the reality that will survive, because the march of history around the world is in the direction which I am going to outline for our region. A vision in which the South Asian region, like other regions, will find the common elements of its history, the common elements of its culture. We will have disagreements. We will continue to have disagreements. We will all retain our sovereignty and be proud of it. We will all have our national identities which have emerged and which we have all embraced with our heart and our soul. There is no question whatsoever of history being turned in the other direction and things that have already happened being undone. Pakistan has embraced Bangladesh, which was once East Pakistan and over which people fought a war. Another generation, a different set of people. Similarly, India and Pakistan will remain separate sovereign states, but at the same time we will find the common elements that will enable us to find prosperity for our people. Let me just begin by saying, why am I so confident and optimistic? If you had spoken to somebody about 65, 70 years ago about Europe, who would have said that the continent that has had so many wars over religion, over ethnicity, over the domination of one country over the others, a region in which France and Germany fought over Alsace and Lorraine, which the Germans insisted on calling the Rhineland, so many times, that region will be one integrated whole where the real issue will no longer be who has Alsace and Lorraine. By the way, I don't even remember on a good day whether France has Alsace-Lorraine now or whether it is now part of, or at least part of it is part of Germany. Because as far as I'm concerned, I arrive in Europe with a Schengen visa and I can travel the whole length and breadth of the place without really knowing, and half the time everybody there knows sign language and bad English, and you get through. And so the question of who is where, what, and so I do not see why that will not happen in our part of the world where there are issues. There are issues. I'm sure my friend, the Afghan ambassador, depending on whether he was in a good mood or in a bad mood. In a bad mood, he probably would have been a little harsher on us. If he was in a good mood, he was probably less harsh on us this afternoon. But it'll pass. It will pass because South Asia is the only significant region of the world that has not yet overcome the historic, traditional disputes and arguments and embraced globalization in the manner in which other regions have done. In East Asia, you have the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. In Europe, the European Union. And what is the biggest crisis for the European Union today? It's not Alsace-Lorraine. It's not whether the German army is going to march into Belgium anymore. It's not about what's Italy's role going to be sort of in relation to its neighbors. It's not even the Balkans anymore. That's over too. What they're worried about is, should we keep Greece in the Euro zone, or should we let them go ahead and reinstate the drachma and be done with it? And that kind of issue, my dear friends, we can live with. And I'm sure each one of you here will give me a round of applause for saying we want those kind of issues in South Asia instead of Kashmir and Afghanistan-Pakistan border issues and terrorism and jihadis who want to fight a war for creating a grand Islamic caliphate that spreads all over the region, which, by the way, in history never existed. It never did. You know, it's just a mythical sort of idea that they want to. It's not recreating something, it's creating something, but they want to call it recreation. We are going to come to that too. United States and Canada, another example. How many people in this room actually are aware or remember that the United States and Canada at one time in history fought wars? Anyone remember? The good student of history here. The Oregon Wars, for example, were the last time. But then, and by the way, there are still unresolved disputes between Canada and the United States in terms of border demarcation, and especially the maritime border demarcation. And yet, the United States and Canada live together in a manner in which both countries embrace their differences and embrace their similarities, and essentially live together in a manner in which they will bring prosperity for one's citizens instead of focusing on the disagreements and disputes that have torn them apart. Now, that doesn't mean the disputes are not important. That doesn't mean that the disagreements are not important. But the desire to overcome the differences and the disagreements for the greater good far overwhelms the differences and the disagreements. And it's not something that I'm making up, especially for the Pakistanis in this audience or people of Pakistani origin. How many of you are there, by the way, people whose origin is Pakistani or who are Pakistani? So quite a few. Folks, I ain't making this up. Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the founder of Pakistan, when he was asked in 1947 by the first ambassador of the United States to comment on what did he see as the future of India-Pakistan relations, turned around and said, and you can find this, for those of you who are research-oriented, you can find it in books. Quite a few books have this quote, based on the declassified documents from that era of the foreign relations of the United States. He told the then American ambassador, he said, after an initial period of bitterness, which is the natural consequences of the circumstances of partition, India and Pakistan will settle down into a relationship that will look more like the relationship between the United States and Canada. So this is not my vision. This is not the vision of the current government of Pakistan. This is not the vision of Yusuf Raza Gilani, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, that lots of Pakistani television commentators like to have potshots at. This is not the vision just of President Asif Ali Zardari, who happens to run the country right now and be the leader of the country, and is not necessarily always fully appreciated by Pakistan's own commentariat, the class that makes the commentary. It is the vision of the founder of the country. It is the vision that was the origin. Now, how do we get there is the big question. Because everybody understands its value. There are stumbling blocks. And India and Pakistan is the big issue here. That's the big elephant. And so now I'll turn to the other part of the crowd. How many people here of Indian origin and who consider themselves Indian? So there's quite a few of you here as well. Well, let me just say, ladies and gentlemen, and then there are those who are neutral in the sense that they're Americans and can't understand these two, why they can't understand each other or get along. Because when it comes to food time, they're both eating the same stuff. When it comes to music time, they are both listening to the same stuff. Except for those who find dance who have two left feet, the rest of them dance to the same beats. So what the heck is wrong here? Well, here's how I explain it to my American friends. I say, when you want to understand the India-Pakistan dynamic, think of the worst divorced couple you know. The couple that once lived together, but now is divorced. The party that wanted the divorce is angry because the other side didn't make divorce easy. And the party that didn't want the divorce still can't forgive them for wanting the divorce. What was the problem? Why did she really want to leave me? What did I do wrong? And they can never get together without insisting on debating something about the past. But if only you had done that. And if, you know what, the last straw came when my mother came and you weren't nice to her. And stuff like that. That's the India part. And then of course they have some issues to fight about. You know, nobody really cares about the children anymore because they've grown up, but they still have an ongoing custody battle that's locked up in the court somewhere. And then there's the beach house, you know, Kashmir, sort of, you know, will you have the possession or will I have the possession? And it goes on forever. And then there are the lawyers, you know, lawyers for both. And if you really, really want to understand the situation, so imagine the worst divorced couple you know, and I can see a few young faces light up because they can imagine their own parents. And then give them both nuclear weapons. That's India and Pakistan for you. But you know what? They also have some things that are based on mutual interest. Pakistan, which is often described, especially in the media, and there's been another nasty piece about Pakistan in the Atlantic Monthly. I'm going to deal with them afterwards, you know. I'll stay up all night writing a rejoinder. But Pakistan is always seen as the stumbling block. But let's look at the map and understand where Pakistan stands. Pakistan is at the crossroads of both the conflicts and the opportunities of our region. Pakistan sits at the crossroads of India and China and Central Asia and the Middle East. So willy-nilly we get dragged into the conflicts of all the four. But at the same time there are opportunities there as well. India, for example, as its economy grows, India's economic growth offers opportunities for Pakistan, and we were very pleased to be able to surmount a major obstacle last week and finally come around to accepting normal trade relations, which as euphemistically called most favored nation. I mean, how can it be most favored nation when 190 countries have it? So basically, it should be normal trade relations that would make life so much easier, because then nobody can make an argument, why are you giving most favored treatment to so-and-so? We're giving it to everybody. It's part of the World Trade Organization's concept of freer trade. But India and Pakistan, and accepting that normal trade relationship, and India of course granted Pakistan that status in 1996, will open ways for Pakistan to take advantage of economic opportunities in India. But India will have to at some point pay attention to the issues that concern Pakistanis. There are emotional issues. As I said, if it's a divorce always has emotional issues, and in emotional issues you have to sometimes sit down and say, even if you don't fully say sorry, recognize the other person's emotion, because nobody's emotion is ever wrong. There are a lot of Pakistanis who have a tremendous sense of grievance about the status of Jammu and Kashmir not being resolved the way Pakistanis expected it to be resolved in 1947. So India will have to come around to discussing the subject of Jammu and Kashmir with us. And from what I know, both sides are willing to do that. We have a composite dialogue going. It may not bring results tomorrow, but it will bring results down the road. It's a process. It's not going to be an event. It's not going to be you and I will wake up one day and everybody will say, gosh, peace broke out in South Asia, and what, India and Pakistan aren't disagreeing anymore, and Afghanistan has come and embraced both of them, and the Americans have packed up and left, and everything's great, you know, and let's watch a movie tonight and order some Chinese food. Ain't gonna happen that way. It's a process. It's a process, and it's a complex process, and it will move forward, and it will be facilitated by the fact that after a long time, Pakistan is again a democracy. Now you read a lot, for those of you who read, you probably read a lot about how Pakistan's democracy has weaknesses and flaws, and every now and then, you know, as happens in all democracies, I don't know how many people here in this room are old enough to remember when Ross Perot sort of from this very state stood up and said everybody's wrong, and, you know, I'm going to spend a lot of money to prove everybody's wrong, and sort of, you know, and a lot of people said, yeah, everybody is wrong, let's support him. You know, and then there's somebody else, Ralph Nader, tried to do the same, but it didn't really change anything. So a similar process is happening in Pakistan too, you know. Some people have kind of started saying, oh, everybody's wrong, but no, the democratic process is again evolving. If you think about it, many of the flaws in Pakistan's democracy are flaws that were found in this country's democracy not very, very long ago. I mean, there are issues of human rights. There was somebody here I was talking to. She and I occasionally cross swords in email exchanges, etc. We are on the same side in terms of the principles, but she's the one who's not in government, so therefore she thinks those who are in the government suck. That's that's how it works, right? If you're a liberal and there's a liberal government, then your view is always that, you know what, these guys aren't good enough liberals. If you're a conservative and the conservatives are government, you always think these guys are not good enough conservatives. The reason is because they have to make decisions and you don't. You just have to comment on them. You don't know the problems that one faces on a day-to-day basis. You don't know how difficult it is to build a consensus in a coalition government, in a parliamentary form. You don't understand how you have to actually juggle various internationals and national and regional pressures and economic pressures. You don't always get it, how you have to balance between the desires of the unions and the desires of the capitalists. And if you really sort of turn the screws on the investors too much, investment dries up. There's nothing then to give to the workers anyway, and if you give in too little to the unions, then the unions create problems and the investors suffer. It's a constant juggling act, and we have only had this round of democracy in Pakistan has only been 3.5 years old. But it's different from the past because this is the first time that all major political forces in the country are represented in the democratic process fully. They are represented in parliament, they are represented in the provincial legislatures. No major political figure has been singled out for persecution. And so Pakistani democracy is moving forward. There's a free media. Sometimes people like me, who are at the receiving end of it, get very worried that the kind of media we have is the kind of media Americans would have if there was a democratic government in this country, democratic administration in this country, and there were 36 Fox News channels. Or there was a Republican administration and there were 36 MSNBCs, you know. So we have the same situation. We have actually 36 cable news channels in Pakistan. And not one of them is pro-government, because they are all a particular political view. They give a certain worldview, and that worldview is not the worldview of the government. It's not the worldview of the majority in parliament. So you can imagine the slash and burn situation that emerges from that. But so far, democracy continues to muddle through and move through. And just as in the United States, race relations is one of the best examples. Starts with slavery. There's people who don't want slavery and there are people who want slavery. It goes on to the Civil War. After the Civil War, there's segregation. Then you fight segregation. After segregation, there's the question of civil rights. Then you fight civil rights. I mean, do people in 2011 in the United States forget that there was a time when the Supreme Court of the United States thought segregation was fine? That all it meant was separate and equal? Do people remember that? I mean, those of you who've been to high school in this country, I hope the standards haven't fallen to the point where they don't even teach this basic stuff. So the same thing applies to Pakistan. We have certain issues. We have issues of legacies of 3 long-term dictators. 3 military dictators who lasted 10 years each. Each one left a strong legacy. Field Marshal Muhammad Ayub Khan, in his 10 years, tried to create a particular ideological nationalism for Pakistan. Then came General Zia-ul Haq, who moved the country further and further in the direction of a very narrow interpretation of religion. And then came General Pervez Musharraf, who basically juggled in the international situation and created again a militarism that has become entrenched. So Pakistan has to move forward beyond militarism, beyond militancy. And we have to work together with our friends in Afghanistan to find an outcome in Afghanistan that will bring stability to Afghanistan, make it possible for international forces to leave the region and make that region stable. We have genuine concerns and legitimate concerns about Afghanistan after America leaves. Our biggest concern is that after America leaves, we do not want Afghanistan to be used as a staging ground for any kind of destabilization of Pakistan. That is our biggest concern about Afghanistan. But we are working together. Only 3 or 4 days ago, President Hamid Karzai and President Zardari met in Istanbul. We agreed that there are misgivings between our two sides. There are just too many armed people in our region who don't all wear uniforms. The war against the Soviets, which the whole world got together to fight because communism was to be fought, has left a very poor legacy. And that legacy is these various militant groups that are now all over our region, especially in our country. They are concentrated there. These are people who were considered the moral equivalents of George Washington by the Reagan administration. But guess what? They ended up becoming the terrorists that need to be hunted down and killed by the time of 9/11. But they are there in our society. And they have a support network in our society. And unlike others for whom it's easy to say, well, you see, even if these people are 1% of your society, you should eliminate them. Guess what? Our population is 180 million. Who's good at math? What's 1% of 180 million? Quick, quick. 1.8 million, for God's sake. So even if it's 1%, it's 1.8 million people of our country. Not easy to physically eliminate them. We can't kill 1.8 million people. Period. We have to have multiple approaches to them. We are not playing a double game. We just have to deal with a multiple reality, multidimensional reality, and therefore we have to deal with it at multiple levels. We have to deal with the reality of certain groups that have some popular support in certain pockets of our society, and we have to deal with it. But that said, the state of Pakistan, which has in the past, and by the way, here's the commercial break. My book was mentioned, but here's the proper introduction to the book. The book is called Pakistan Between Mosque and Military, available on Amazon.com. If you qualify for Amazon Prime, you will get free shipping and handling. It's a great book, wonderful reviews, and it will tell you more than you need to know or should know about our country and its relationships in the region and the implications of democracy for peace in South Asia. But in that book also, I critique, before I became ambassador, I critique and criticized our own past governments for using some of these militants as an instrument of policy. But changing that around again is going to take time. So my mantra these days in the United States is that the United States and Pakistan need to continue to work together. We will continue to work together even though we have disagreements, and we will work on overcoming those disagreements. But above all, Pakistanis need to give up the tendency to believe the worst conspiracy theories about the United States, and Americans need to give up being impatient with Pakistan. It's a tall order, and that's why it needs very, very sophisticated and difficult diplomacy. Only under a democratic order in Pakistan will the momentum for normalization of relations with India and normalization of relations with Afghanistan and stabilization of Afghanistan continue. If, God forbid, the democratic process in Pakistan is in any way undermined, the region's stability will be adversely affected. And here is why that will happen. The groups that have the most hardline view of the future of the region will gain from the weakening and undermining of democracy. That is why, however flawed it might be, that democracy must be sustained and must move forward. Once we move on, so let's fast forward. All of this starts happening, pieces start falling together. What is the long-term vision? The long-term vision is a South Asian free trade agreement, practically implemented, a bit like NAFTA is here, North American Free Trade Agreement, ASEAN. We all benefit from one another. Trade between Pakistan and Afghanistan has already been, the rails have already been laid in the form of the Afghanistan-Pakistan Transit Trade Agreement. And the opportunity has already been created for Pakistan-India trade relations. If India acts generously, and this is especially for the people from the Pakistani press who are taking notes, please take down the sentence correctly because you guys sometimes mess up. If India acts generously and understands that it is in its own interest to allow Pakistani democracy to thrive and Pakistan's economy to grow, then, and is willing to understand Pakistan's concerns about issues like Kashmir, not necessarily resolving them tomorrow. Now that sentence you can keep out of your stories. But you don't have to solve it tomorrow, but the point is pay attention to it. We can move forward. We can move forward and we can have a regional arrangement that will be similar to the regional arrangements in other parts of the world. There will be many slips between the cup and the lip between now and then, but we will be able to get there. Since I started with a couplet from Faz, let me end with another couplet from one of the classical Urdu poets who says, "Ke baad ranjish ke gale milte hue rukta hai ji." Baad ranjish ke gale milte hue rukta hai ji. Ab munasib hai yahi, kuch tum badho, kuch hum badhe. After each bout of anxiety between lovers, there is a hesitation to get together again. The only way it works is if each side takes a step forward together. Thank you all very much. I don't know if you want me to take questions. Oh, you do? Okay, so are you going to guide me in the questions from here? And can I have a glass of water, please? Okay, question time. Who wants to start? Okay.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Your Excellency, I see a beautiful vision you have for South Asia. What a wonderful dream. What a wonderful wish. I wish that God Almighty grant your wish and this happens. But the reality is that India is a big brother. You call it a husband or wife.
Of a comment, so I mean I won't add to the comment. What I will say, however, is that there is no reason for despondency. I think India, and I don't know how you feel, but I think India and Pakistan are in a much better place today than, say, for example, they were in 1999. And I think we are moving forward. We are willing to tackle difficult questions between ourselves. Now, in difficult negotiations, it never happens that either side gets what they want fully. No one ever gets everything they want in a good settlement. Both sides do not get their perfect deal. That's how it always happens. Otherwise, why is it a settlement? Why is it not a capitulation by one to the other? You know, it can't be that one just says, I want this, and the other one says, okay. And that's the end of that. So both sides will have to meet somewhere halfway, and I think that is a process that is ongoing. I think we should just put faith into the process and hope that will come to some conclusion. There is always another way. Look, what you cannot agree upon should not be the only subject you discuss. There are things that you can find agreement upon. And so the way forward is often to move on the things that you can resolve while setting aside the things that you cannot resolve for another day. And I agree that For example, Pakistan cannot ignore the presence of Indian military troops along its border. It cannot ignore the presence of significant numbers of troops in Kashmir. But again, we also have arrangements whereby both sides keep each other fully in the loop about troop movements, etc. And we can improve those arrangements and at some point also find ways whereby both sides can reduce the number of troops that are engaged along that border. But the most important thing to understand about the definition of negotiation is that neither side gets what they started out demanding at the first, in the first stage. No one gets it. No one gets the perfect solution. Again, to cite an Urdu couplet, "Kabhi kisi ko mukammal jahan nahi milta, kabhi zamin to kabhi asman nahi milta." No one gets a perfect world. Someone is aspiring for the sky and has to settle for the earth. So that's how the world works.
Is happening, how Pakistan is actually, and this is the Afghan ambassador's words, manipulating and exploiting the situation. And number two, you have tried to paint it with a lighter brush, and a very enjoyable conversation actually. But Kashmir is not a beach house, and situation between India and Pakistan is not really a divorce situation. The question is that tomorrow, as you support plebiscite in Kashmir, and this is very important, if tomorrow there is an autonomy for Kashmir, how far are you willing to give Kashmir their original land, their original boundaries? The occupied, Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, which you call Azad Kashmir, and the Gilgit and the Hunza and all the way, and the land, chunk of land which you have given to China. Are you willing to do that?
As far as Afghanistan is concerned, I wasn't here when Ambassador Haqani spoke this afternoon. Ambassador Haqani is a very dear friend of mine. We have both worked together. We have worked together when neither one of us was, in our current positions. And we are both committed and wedded to the idea of a stable Afghanistan, which we both believe is in the interest of both our countries. Now, in relations between nations, moments come when people have misgivings with one another. There have been a few tragic incidents in Afghanistan in the recent past. There are elements in Afghanistan that remain wary of Pakistan's intentions in Afghanistan, just as Pakistan remains wary of the alliances of certain groups in Afghanistan with some of our other regional actors. So I personally feel that it's always best not to respond to specific comments and stay at the level of policy. And the real policy level is that Pakistan remains committed to working with Afghanistan in finding a solution in which Afghanistan can be stable, foreign troops can gradually withdraw from Afghanistan. Afghanistan and Pakistan are joined at the hip. We are the access to the sea for Afghanistan, which we have recognized in the transit trade agreement. We played host to 5 million Afghan refugees in the war against the Soviets, and during that period, by the way, in most countries, when you have large number of refugees from another country, there are tremendous tensions and there are ethnic and other conflicts. In Pakistan, there were none of those when the Afghans came. So that speaks volumes of the deeper connection between our two countries. If we have some political differences, well, guess what? Right now, America is in the middle of political, a political campaign. You see people hurling disagreeable remarks about each other. That's not going to be what will last. What will last is the historic relationship between Afghanistan and Pakistan. And I think both Ambassador Haqani and I are on the same page in terms of wanting a better outcome between our two countries, overcoming the disagreements under him. Now, I know that you obviously, from your emotion, I can feel that you have a personal emotional connection, probably from Kashmir yourself or something like that, which is why you couldn't understand the analogies which were primarily meant for the American... Pardon? No. If you would allow me to complete the sentence, then, it would be easier for you to understand. Usually things are better understood when they are fully heard. So I was saying my analogies and my comments about the divorce were aimed at the American segment of the audience, which sometimes finds it very difficult to understand what's going on, because America is a nation that usually finds solutions and moves on. I mean, how many issues has America kept pending for 60, 70, 80, 90 years? Americans don't have endless arguments. In fact, most legal arguments in America are settled out of court. Because, you have a judicial issue, you go to court, so that analogy was meant for the Americans, not for you. And if you're offended by it, my personal expression of regrets to you about it. On the question of Kashmir, well, very frankly, Pakistan has always said that we want a solution to the Kashmir dispute that is reflective of the wishes of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And how we get there is again what needs to be discussed. And there are parties to that. We are a party to that. India is a party to that. The Kashmiri people and their representatives are a party to that. You and I at a seminar at the University of North Texas are certainly not going to resolve the Kashmir dispute. So therefore I will just drop this and say that everybody has a position that is clearly stated. Everybody knows that position, and that position will be negotiated whenever the opportunity presents itself, and will be resolved and changed according to the circumstances that are available at that time. There are other disputes in the world of a similar nature, where people have emotions, strong sentiments, strong views, but the very fact that they have such strong views makes it difficult for there to be a solution. It's easier to solve problems where everybody is willing to give and take. If everybody says, this is a package thing for us, this is a package thing for us, this is a package thing for us, multiple positions, it's not always easy to negotiate. But the international community has tried in the past. If it can help now, it would be welcome. You already know that what used to be the state of Jammu and Kashmir before 14th of August 1947, its territory and its land is now under the control of 3 different countries right now. And to get everybody to agree to that will take a lot more diplomacy than can be undertaken in a 10-minute conversation in a question and answer session right now.
I would suggest that have direct questions rather than long commentary, okay? And I also would like to encourage the students to ask questions. So the next one right here.
Yes, my question is probably aimed toward Pakistani-American relations right now. In 2001, I lost my cousin in the Twin Towers, and I always had a feeling that, Osama would be captured or killed, and I just wasn't expecting him to be killed in Pakistan. My question to you is, how can you just let a $25 million bounty terrorist just wander around Pakistan, unnoticed?
Well, first of all, let me extend my heartfelt condolences to you over your cousin, over the loss of your cousin, and to all those who lost their loved ones in 9/11. And also to the 30,000 Pakistani families who have lost members of their families in the terrorism and terrorism-related incidents that have taken place since 9/11 in Pakistan, in which, people forget this, but more Pakistanis have died as a result of the actions of terrorists as well as while fighting terrorism than any other country in the world. So our heart goes out to all victims of terrorism, be they the ones who were in New York or be they the ones who are in other countries and other parts of the world, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Pakistan, in Europe, and even as far as Indonesia. Osama bin Laden being found in Pakistan was as much a shock to Pakistanis as it was to Americans. Should Pakistan have done a better job for looking out for Osama bin Laden and others? Possibly, but one must remember that Pakistan was the country where the overwhelming majority of Al-Qaeda leaders were arrested, and the reason is simple. If you see the map, there is nowhere else they could have gone. Some went into Iran if they had some kind of linkages with Iran. I mean, that was possible because they could slip in there. But relations between the Taliban and the Sunni Al-Qaeda leadership there were not necessarily the best. So many of them slipped into Pakistan. And if you remember, whether it's Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Abu Zubaydah, Abu Faraj al-Libi, all of these guys were caught in Pakistan. So to suggest that Pakistan was letting anybody be there is, in my opinion, very unfair. It's one of those things where it's embarrassing, it's difficult, it's bad, but to say that it was deliberately or somehow allowed to be done is wrong. If anybody at any level in the government of Pakistan would have known it, very frankly, they would have traded that information for the $25 million reward. They didn't. They didn't. So it's quite obvious that what bin Laden did was something rather smart from his point of view, which was he kept his location secret only to those who shared his belief system, a very narrow, very close number of people, a narrow band of people. It's called hiding in plain sight. Mafia figures have done it in history. They have done it cleverly. In this country, some people have done it. What is important now is not to try and use that as a means of blaming Pakistan, but to help Pakistan develop the capacity and the capability to make sure that the rest of Osama bin Laden's sort of co-conspirators and ideological fellow travelers in Pakistan are not able to plot against anybody, including Pakistan, from Pakistani soil. And if you read more recent comments, you will find that, and I can't go beyond that because on intelligence matters, talking little is always best. I think that the Pakistani and the US intelligence services are working far more closely since the bin Laden raid on sharing of intelligence and tightening the noose around Al-Qaeda than has ever been the case before. And American leaders have publicly said so.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I come from China. I have a question. You know, there's a Chinese saying said, the place you sit, design the way you think. I know you were a journalist, and I respect what you did 12 years ago. But right now you are an ambassador. So, did that change or somewhat change the way you treat free speech, or what do you think of democracy in Pakistan or in the other countries?
Well, my commitment to free speech and democracy has been always consistent. I don't know if you know, I don't put it in my bio, but there was a time when I was put into prison for my views. And I took that in my stride. I came to the United States primarily because I did not want to stay in prison. So I came here, and I thought teaching at Boston University is a much better sort of way to spend my time than hanging out in prison in Rawalpindi. And I did that. And so as ambassador, my views are not very different. I fully support the freedom of speech. I mean, describing journalism as poor journalism or bad journalism does not mean you are questioning the right of journalists to engage in that poor or bad journalism. So I do not support any restrictions by the government on the freedom of people, of freedom of journalists. I do not support any attempts to silence voices in the media. That does not, however, mean that one will always... Freedom of speech also applies to me. And it allows me to have the freedom of speech to criticize what you just said in your free speech. So it's like vice versa, and that's the way it works. So any comments I make about contemporary Pakistani journalism are essential. And by the way, they are shared by a lot of people. I'm not the only one. I mean, even the Pakistanis here, those who are totally happy with the state of Pakistani media, please raise your hands. I rest my case. Here's the problem. The problem is that it is ideologically, it's taken over. The media is free, but it's being run by people with a very purely ideological agenda. That said, we accept and respect their freedom, and we are waiting for the time when we can use that freedom to challenge their dominance and create a new media in which people will have a little more diversity of opinion, and why the heck not?
or on USA to Pakistan generally, or on how the U.S. can improve its image in Pakistan. And just a thought, would cooperation in clean energy, wind power in Pakistan be an interesting way to do that, or other kind of high-profile ways to cooperate in things that people think are good?
The United States has, since 1954, been very supportive of Pakistan's development efforts and has provided assistance to Pakistan. USAID, the United States Agency for International Development, has had a presence in Pakistan for 50 years. But there are people who feel that it has, A, not been consistent. There have been times when assistance has flowed, and then there are times when the assistance has been withdrawn. It's created a certain political tension between our two countries. The specifics of aid, look, very frankly, I'm one of those who thinks aid is a good thing when you absolutely need it, but ideally, Pakistan should not be an aid-dependent country. Pakistan has the energy. I don't mean energy as in electricity and power, I said energy as a nation. Pakistan has the quality as a nation to be able to be a mercantile nation, a trading nation. We can actually be a nation. And by the way, in the last 1 year, we have expanded our exports by 30%. 30%, that's a lot. So very frankly, if we just diversified our product range, we went like some of the East Asian countries, all we need is a catalyst. All we need is the catalyst. So American aid and assistance is welcome to be the catalyst for enabling Pakistan to find its own groove and be able to be a productive nation that actually, we have very productive soil. There is no reason why we can't improve the productivity of our soil. In agriculture, I'll just give you an example. During the 1950s, the average annual growth rate of Pakistani agriculture was 6%. In the 60s, it was 5% per annum. In the 70s, it was 4% per annum. In the 80s, it was 3% per annum. In the 90s, it was 2% per annum. And now it's down to 1%. What does that tell you? What it tells you is that while the agriculture is going on at a particular pace, it's not being modernized enough to grow faster. And that can be done. We can put in the inputs and thereby attain the higher growth rate. We can improve our yields. We can produce much more than we have been doing. We can harness our water resources, our energy resources. You spoke about wind and solar energy. Pakistan has sun most of the time. There's no reason why we can't harness solar energy, and we are doing it in certain places. It's just that the cost, as you know, of solar energy per unit is far more expensive, and so that's a global problem, not just a Pakistani problem. A major wind farm is being put in near Karachi. Pakistan has already been mapped for wind energy. I hope you know that. USAID helped do that. And so investment in all of that, ideally from the private sector, the young guys here who are about to become entrepreneurs and inherit their billions of dollars from rich uncles, think about it. Your investment is going to be the way forward. But to the extent that there is an aid package for Pakistan, we welcome it. That, I think, should go in areas that have been neglected in the past. Pakistan's neglected areas have been education and healthcare and infrastructure. And if Pakistan can have the necessary investments in education, healthcare and infrastructure, we can certainly attain much faster growth rates, much higher growth rates. 48% of our school-going age children between the age of 5 and 15 do not go to school. And that is the problem that we need to address. And my bottom line on this peace conference is that the real dividend of peace will come to Pakistan in the form of our being able to put in the dollars and the rupees into the education of these 48% who don't go to school, into improving the quality of our own education, into harnessing our young population. Half of Pakistan's population is below the age of 21. That's 90 million young people. In an era in which many countries, the former Soviet Union, Russia, Japan, have a problem with aging populations. Young populations can be an asset, they can be a problem, but we can make it into an asset. You invest into making the country a mercantile, entrepreneurial nation which really finds its place under the sun, not because we have nuclear weapons, which is incidental, and provides us a nuclear deterrent, but that should not be the source of Pakistani pride. young Pakistanis here, pay attention to what I'm saying. There is no reason that the nuclear weapons should be the only thing that make us proud of Pakistan. We need to be able to find the day when our products are our source of pride, when our musicians are our source of pride, when our artists are our source of pride, when our artisans are our source of pride, when our economy provides opportunities, when people can actually freely travel to Pakistan and there is a tourism boom that actually enables us to have a happier, more successful and a much more widely globally respected nation. And 18 studies have been written on how to build a school in Afghanistan. They should have built 18 schools in Afghanistan with the money they paid those wretched consultants to write those books, you know. And so this consultancy industry, which Congress sometimes supports, because after all the consultants go to the congressman and say, can you put in a clause into the bill that says, and by the way, when this is done, it should be done with American consultants and professors. I like some of these consultants are friends of mine. They're nice guys, wonderful people. Maybe you know a few of them, you know, great to talk to, and some with very good ideas. Some with very good ideas. But the fact remains that the real way for America to win hearts and minds in Pakistan is to really be helpful. I mean, one of the things I always tell the story, as Pakistan's ambassador to the United States, I tell people the story of how the best thing America ever did for Pakistan was something called the kinu. Now, I don't know how many people picked up on that right now, but the most popular Pakistani citrus fruit is the kinu. Well, guess what? The kinu is not a Pakistani fruit. The kinu is actually kinno, K-I-N-N-O-W. It was a gentleman in California who developed this particular variety of fruit at the University of California. And in 1954, he provided saplings for India and Pakistan. And in Pakistan, it really, the soil was good and it just took, and now it's the biggest fruit. And now there's hardly, how many of the young people, be honest now that I've told the story, don't lie, how many of the young people in this room actually knew that the kinu comes from America and it's not actually from Sargodha? See? So all of you really believed it's our thing. And that is the kind of fruit, literally as well as metaphorically, of American assistance that we need. You provide the seed, but we grow the trees and reap the harvest and live quite happily. Only thing, keep reminding us every few years, we did it for you so that our guys can remember that it's not just drones that come from America, the kinus also came from America. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen. I think I'm going to bring it to an end. I'm a little exhausted. Thanks.
मेरा ये ख्याल है कि ड्रोन हमलों के बारे में पाकिस्तान की पॉलिसी वाज़े है। पाकिस्तान ने अमेरिका पर हमेशा ये वाज़े किया है कि हम ड्रोन हमलों को पसंदीदगी की निगाह से नहीं देखते और हम ये भी नहीं चाहते कि हमारे शहरी उनका निशाना बने। इससे ज़्यादा बात इस मौजू के ऊपर करना सिफारती तौर पर मुनासिब नहीं है, लेकिन अमेरिका हमारे मौक़िफ़ को पहले से बहुत बेहतर तौर पर समझता है।
अच्छा, जो इमदाद के हवाले से भी थोड़ी बातचीत चल रही है कि अपना रिमर्स हैं कि अपना जो इमदाद है वो मतलब है कि कम कर दी गई है, उसमें 50 जो है 1.5 थी तो अब 100 कर दी गई है। तो ये क्या
पाकिस्तान और अमेरिका के ताल्लुकात सिर्फ इमदाद के ऊपर मुनहसर नहीं है, ना ही पाकिस्तान इमदाद का इस हद तक तालिब है कि उसकी बुनियाद पर अपनी खारजा पॉलिसी को इमदाद का ताबे बना दे। पाकिस्तान और अमेरिका के ताल्लुकात अच्छे होने चाहिए इस वजह से कि अमेरिका और पाकिस्तान दोनों का मफाद इससे वाबस्ता है। अमेरिका दुनिया की सबसे बड़ी सुपर पावर है और पाकिस्तान अपने खित्ते का एक अहम मुल्क है। हम इस बुनियाद पर ताल्लुकात कायम करना चाहते हैं, इमदाद की बुनियाद पर नहीं।
तो ये बात सही है, मतलब इमदाद कम हुई है?
इमदाद के बारे में आपको पता है कि अमेरिका के कांग्रेशनल प्रोसेस के अंदर इमदाद के मसला जो है उसके ऊपर मुस्तकिल नजरसानी होती रहती है। कभी इमदाद की रकम के ऊपर कोई एक कांग्रेसमैन कोई शर्त लगाते कोई दूसरी, तो अभी तक वो पूरा का पूरा प्रोसेस कंप्लीट नहीं हुआ। जब कंप्लीट होगा तो तब उस पर हम आपको अपनी राय दे सकेंगे।
बहुत शुक्रिया।